Hi everyone, welcome back to part 2 of integrating quotations or integrating source material, where this one will focus on direct quotations. So if you are watching this first, please make sure to go back to part 1 where I discuss paraphrase and reasons for integrating sources and what all that entails. So this is a continuation. So a little bit about direct quotation. So first things first is, what is a direct quotation? Well, essentially, a direct quotation is using the exact words of an author copied directly from a source word for word. So unlike paraphrase, where you take another author's information or words or whatever and paraphrase using your own words to communicate their ideas, this is going to use the information word for word and not change anything. So in using a direct quotation, you must have quotation marks. Those are going to be incredibly important. That's what's going to signal to the reader that you are taking others' words and using it exactly how it is, okay? Now, the other thing too is that these, like the paraphrase, need to be cited within the in-text citation. So whether if you're using MLA, it'll be in-text citations and then reference back to the works cited page. If you're using APA, then you will use the reference page along with the in-text citations, okay? So in this video, we're going to look at how that might look and just a brief example. When we are going to put it all together, please make sure to watch that video. But ultimately, the question begins with, should I use direct quotations or when should I use paraphrase? The reality is that there is no one right answer. Again, it goes back to why. Why are you using the information? And so with the paraphrase, of course, there are the different reasons why you would do that. And in the instance of a direct quotation, why you might use a direct quotations for several reasons, really. First is that if you want to add the power of an author's words to support your argument. So in other words, let's say you're using a researcher or a person who coined a specific idea, or it's new-ish, or that they're, phrasing a concept, idea, or data or information in a way that's powerful, and you want to embrace that in your own writing. And you are basically claiming that this person's words has power and it's important, then you would want to integrate it using the direct quotation. The other could be for another reason, in the sense of you want to disagree with an author's argument and you don't want to risk misinterpreting what they're saying. So you want to present it clearly to your readers that here is exactly what they said and I want to disagree with that, and I don't want to leave room for confusion, okay? Because sometimes people can say, well, you misinterpreted what they said. Well, no, you presented it directly using the direct quotations. Next is you want to highlight what they said because it's particularly eloquent, or that it's the way that the author worded it or wrote it. Maybe they're a strong writer. Not everything that everybody writes, they might have important ideas, but the way they communicate it might not be so great. And so if you find that you can't say it any better and that you want to capture its essence using the way they wrote it, then you would directly quote. The other is for comparing and contrasting specific points of view. Similar to the disagree, you want to make sure that it's coming off clear and you don't want to risk misinterpretation. And then you want to note important research that comes before you if you're building off of ideas, right? So very similar to exhibits. If you want to build off an idea, or in argumentation, for example, you want to validate and then use that as a jumping off point for creating, building on those ideas, then you would want to use the direct quotation, okay? Now, with direct quotation, there are two ways. You can use a short quote or long quote, also known as block quotation. So short quotes are favorable. You want to, especially in shorter essays, to use the short quote because it is 40 words or fewer. And so you want to try, and again, it really depends on how you're going to integrate this quotation, because remember, you can use one line, you can use everything they said, or you can use parts of it. So we'll look at that in the other video. But The other version is the block quotation, and again, this is 40 words or more, and it is called block because it's blocked off, right? So in this example here, you can see the signal phrase, Nellie Dean treats Heathcliff poorly and dehumanizes him throughout her narration, and then this is the block quotation, essentially, right? And so in this example here, we didn't change any words. It's exactly how it is, and then we cite it, and then we have, of course, referencing the hamburger, how we're going to, why we put that in there, right? So this shows that, and then you would proceed to talk about this block quotation, okay? So again, the reasons would be the same. Why would you use short quote versus block quote? Again, if you feel like it's really important the way that they said it and you don't want to risk misinterpretation, then you'll use the block quotation. But as I said before, the block quotes are generally with much longer research papers, analysis papers, things like that, whereas a short quote is generally more used throughout. So you can use a combination as well. It doesn't have to be one or another. Oftentimes you'll find that in much larger research papers, you'll be using a combination of both, including paraphrase as well. Okay, so what does a direct quotation look like? So we're going to use the same information as before. We have our results, right, to our study. I broke this down in the paraphrase video. So if you are watching this first, make sure to go back so you can understand what this passage means. But here we have two examples in the way that we can incorporate the direct quotation. So the first is using the signal phrase. And of course, in many cases, we're probably going to use the signal phrase a lot. But what that means is where you're using the author's name in the actual signal phrase. Okay, so here you have Randler states that late risers have, quote, a high misalignment of social and biological time, which results in a mismatch between their natural schedules and the normal workday. And then this is going to be the page number. So here we have the author's name, and then we have the page number. So this is our in-text citation. But I wanted to draw attention to this. So the part that is quote comes directly from this here. You'll notice that a high misalignment of social and biological time is coming from right here, and you'll notice it's in the middle, right after additionally. We don't need to include those. So when we are quoting in the middle of a sentence, it's going to begin with a lowercase. If it's going to start the sentence, it'll be with the capital, just like you would with the start of a new sentence. So you get to determine what part, right? And again, you don't want to mislead your readers. You don't want to just pull things out because it suits your benefit. Remember, the part of the reason why you're citing this is so we can go back to ensure that you're not doing that. So you don't want to get caught misrepresenting. So if you're going to take information, from this, make sure that it's accurate, make sure that it aligns with what you're trying to talk about, and so forth. Okay. The other is where you don't want to put the author's name in there. So you would put it in the in-text citation here. So Randler, page 2787. So we have our signal phrase, there's a difference according to a study, and then people with a high misalignment of social and biological time may be less able to act in a proactive manner, probably because of sleep delay. So you'll notice here we have capitalization, right? Because this starts, the sentence or what the study does and so forth. So here we have the period goes at the end or after the parentheses and in-text citation, although we've talked about this before. So just make sure that happens. But again, you can see it could be much longer, it could be shorter, maybe bits and pieces, maybe one word, really just depends. But again, as long as you're not changing the words where the quotations are, it has to exactly come from the text itself, okay? So let's go ahead and look at an example here. So we have Graf, Birkenstein, and Durst believe that response templates can help students, quote, become active participants in the important conversations of the academic world. We have our in-text citation and period. That is because response templates help students position their own argument in relationship to the arguments of scholars and experts. With the help of templates, students don't just integrate sources, they enter conversations with their sources. So if we break this down, we can see our signal phrase here. And we say believe, right? We chose the word believe because that's what their thoughts are, right? If we said argued, that would be different. So we want to make sure that the verb is used correctly in this aspect. And then, of course, we have our direct quotation, which is signaled by the quotation marks. We have our in-text citation. We already have the names here of our author, so we don't have to put it in the parentheses. And then, of course, in the hamburger analogy, we have why we're using it, okay, and why it's important. So we're giving our interpretation here. So this is not an argument, right? And if you think back to the B model, I know that I'm not using this, or the person that wrote this is not using it to argue anything, but rather just interpreting what Graf, Berkenstein, and Durst believe to be true. Okay, so go ahead and look at the other video that's going to walk you through an exercise of the different ways that you can integrate sources, how you might do it, why, and so forth, and then we'll go from there.